minority is pushing for the Interior Minister to appear before the House to answer questions on what they say is insecurity in the country. Minority spokesperson on Foreign Affairs, Okudzeto Ablakwa, says the recent incidents of kidnapping of Canadian citizens in Kumasi and others are worrying. The Speaker directed that leadership met to agree appropriate date and time for Ambrose Derry to appear. Joseph Opoku Gakpo is our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. He joined me in the studio to tell us how it all began in Parliament and the outcomes. Joseph, you're welcome.
Hi, Gifty.
Okay. How, again, did this matter get initiated on the floor?
So there was what they call the business agenda for the day, outlining what Parliament will be doing next week. Okay. And we know a number of ministers, including the Attorney General, will be appearing next week to respond to a number of questions. When the House discussed that, then Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa drew the attention of the House to what he says has been a trend of foreign nationals being kidnapped in the country, and what he described as a trend of growing insecurity when it comes to foreign nationals in the country. He mentioned the situation with the Canadian citizens, said that there was another situation with an Indian businessman, there was another with, he says, an Estonian national, and a number of others, and said it was an increasing trend, and he felt that, Parliament needed to demand answers from the Interior Minister on all of that. And it drew a bit of reaction because the majority leader of HMS Abuso didn't take kindly to his reference to those incidents.
Well, what were his reasons?
As a trend, the use of the word trend.
Okay.
And he was making the point that the incidents as outlined by Mr. Ablakwa cannot be conclusively described as something that had resulted in a trend so worrying that he describes it as such. So there was a back and forth debate on that until eventually the Speaker said this is an issue that leadership has to look at for a concrete decision to be taken on when and in what form the Interior Minister will be appearing before the House to respond to questions on the issue.
Well, we can go to Parliament and hear more of that now.
Mr. Ablakwa explaining why he thinks the trend is worrying.
Yeah.
You do know that as we speak, the Takoradi girls, the 3 Takoradi girls, have still not been found. And as one will have thought that we will be expecting some good news about the finding of these 3 young ladies, we are increasingly hearing of more kidnappings. As we speak, 2 Canadians have been kidnapped in the Ashanti regional capital of Kumasi. This matter has gained international prominence. Sadly, we are in the news again for the wrong reasons. It's all over. It's being reported on the BBC, on Al Jazeera, in the Guardian newspaper, the Washington Post, the Independent newspaper in Canada. It's created a lot of apprehension. And you know that it has led to Canada revising its travel advisory to Canadian citizens. And you do know the implications of this new travel advisory, asking Canadians and for that matter foreigners who wish to visit Ghana to be wary of the spate of kidnappings going on. As ranking member on the Committee of Foreign Affairs, I am particularly worried that this latest kidnapping of the 2 Canadians comes in the wake of a recent kidnapping incident of an Estonian diplomat. Before then was also kidnapping of an Indian businessman. And so it does appear that something which is very rare, very un-Ghanaian, is beginning to look like a new wave of crime which the perpetrators are carrying out with such bravado. And so far, no arrests have been made, no prosecutions have been made. We do not know if ransoms are being paid, and we do not know if Ghana is now becoming a hub for these kidnappings. So we in the minority are deeply, deeply concerned about the spate of insecurity. We are concerned that the 3 Takoradi girls have still not been found. It's just been a comedy of errors. We remain outraged at how the CID boss Nana Mametiwa handled the affair, claiming she was only giving us hope. We now want to know facts. We want to appreciate exactly what is going on, because we all do not feel safe. And now you are seeing a situation where foreigners, including diplomats, including volunteers, young volunteers, are being kidnapped. It does not bode well for the image of our country. It will drive away investors. It will not help the president's industrialization agenda, and it does not make Ghana an attractive destination. It portends trouble for all of us. We are all at risk, and that is why I have made this application.
Okudzeto Ablakwa is the minority spokesperson on foreign affairs there. So, as he was speaking at this time, the parliamentary business was still going on on the floor.
It was. And the issue, the vigilantism bill, was actually being discussed.
Right.
Today, the House did what they call the second reading of the bill. And at this juncture, this is when the committee that looked at the bill, the Constitutional Affairs Committee, presented its report to the House. So the Attorney General was in the House to move the motion for a discussion on the very principles of the bill. And so the chairman of the committee went ahead to read the recommendations of the committee, and we gather that there are about 118 amendments that need to be done to the 10-clause bill. And these range from very minor amendments like wording like THE,
typos
and all, to very major amendments, including a suggestion that Parliament is making that the definition of what exactly vigilantism is be expanded more than what is contained in the bill currently. And you know, Parliament is again suggesting that the list of vigilante groups as was outlined in the schedule of the bill that was brought to the House be expanded. They're adding on more than 20 other groups and giving powers to the Attorney General to also, at any point in time, by his or her own authority, designate any other group as a vigilante group. And what that will mean is that all the sanctions that will apply to anyone establishing a vigilante group will apply to that particular group. So today the report was laid, the House debated the principles. Among others, the minority is again demanding that the Emil-Short Commission's report be made public before they go ahead with the necessary amendment. But we can hear from the Attorney General, Gloria Akuffo, who was reiterating again why President Akufo-Addo is convinced the vigilantism bill is the way to go in dealing with political party vigilantism and other criminal activities.
Well, let's listen to her now.
The notice is required to include the date of the former disbandment and the names of past and present members of the disbanded political party vigilante group. The Speaker's failure to comply with the requirements of the notice is an offence under the bill, punishable by a term of imprisonment of not less than 5 years and not more than 15 years. The Minister is also required under the bill to publish in the Gazette a list of the disbanded political party vigilante groups within 3 months of the coming into force of the bill. The formation, organization, operation, or activities of a political party vigilante group is prohibited under the bill. Members of a political party vigilante group, as well as participation in the activities of a political party vigilante group, is also an offence under the bill. The bill further seeks to prohibit the funding of a political party vigilante group.
And as to Attorney General there, Gloria Akuffo, Joseph, we also know that they spoke about the flood situation.
It came up particularly in conversations outside Parliament. The Roads and Transport Committee's ranking member, Kwame Abuja, had concerns about how a lot of roads had been flooded, suburbs, a number of them have been flooded, and he raised concerns about how we have a number of roads that the engineering was done and it was built in a way that there were no gutters by the sides to allow for the water to flow. And once again, there was a call for action on the part of government. He's, for example, calling for a new policy when it comes to environmental management, and government should ensure the strict implementation of those policies as the way to deal with any future possible flood situation.
Well, policy, I'm not quite sure about policy.
But he made an interesting point, though, that there is an environmental policy that Parliament approved some years ago from the Environmental Protection Agency, and that focused less on issues that lead to situations like flood. And there was a lot of talk in the policy about Ghana's, actions and inactions that leads to climate change and its impact that reflect more of the global conversation than the pertinent situation with floods as contained in the policy, which is why he thought something more focused relating to Ghana should be introduced.
Yeah, well, I don't know when it comes to flooding. I mean, last night I got home and then it started raining.
That was the when it started raining, and I couldn't go home as a result of that.
But that shouldn't happen. You know, that shouldn't happen. When it rains, people are harvesting the rain and people are using the rain to, you know, grow their farms and grow their backyard gardens, whatever. But when it rains, we die.
We all know what to do, but unfortunately the right things are not being done. Yesterday, for example, the Works and Housing Minister was in Parliament again in the morning to talk about how he's going to seek more than $8 billion in bond money to help re-engineer a lot of cities to avoid future destruction of property as a result of rains.
Well, hopefully that works. Re-engineering, yes, I could agree to that, but whether or not we can put it on paper and do it on the ground, which is all the what happens all the time, what tends to happen all the time. We have a very brilliant plan on the paper, but getting it on the ground becomes a problem. But well, yesterday I was praying for everybody who lived in areas where it gets flooded, hoping that it wouldn't get flooded, but it did get flooded, and we reported to you on that. Joseph, thank you very much for coming through. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, my colleague who's our parliamentary affairs correspondent. We're talking about it. Hopefully we get to a permanent solution.